nobody ever came to these sites with a clear idea of what they were searching for.
We have always been told she was the most beautiful woman in history, but new DNA analysis and forensic reconstruction suggest a terrifying alternative.
The last pharaoh might not have been a beauty queen at all. Instead, she may have been a genetic time bomb. The DNA of Cleopatra has finally been analyzed, and what it revealed is absolutely terrifying. It seems that her greatest battle was not against the Roman Empire, but against her own biology. But here is the catch. The clues have been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years. You just have to know where to look. The door to the underworld. For 2,000 years, the sands of Egypt have held on to one specific secret, a secret that has baffled historians and treasure hunters for centuries. We are talking about the final resting place of the last pharaoh, Queen Cleopatra. Usually, most experts will tell you she's gone. They say she's buried under the modern streets of Alexandria, lost forever to earthquakes and rising tides. But for the last 20 years, one woman dared to say they were all wrong. That woman is Kathleen Martinez. She's not your typical academic in a tweed jacket. She's a criminal lawyer turned archaeologist from the Dominican Republic. And she did not approach this like a history lesson. She approached it like a cold case investigation. She treated Cleopatra's disappearance like a crime scene that needed to be deciphered. While everyone was looking left, Martinez looked right. Her profile of the suspect led her 30 miles west of Alexandria to a forgotten, crumbling temple called Taposiris Magna. And in 2022, the ground beneath her feet finally revealed a massive anomaly. Martinez and her team smashed through the limestone and found something that simply should not exist: a tunnel. But not just any tunnel. This thing is a shocking replica of a legendary design. It is carved through solid bedrock, stretching over 4,300 feet. That's nearly a mile long. It's 6 feet high, submerged in mud and water, and it heads straight out toward the Mediterranean Sea. Architects are calling it a geometric miracle. It's an engineering masterpiece that matches the legendary ancient Greek tunnel of Eupalinos. But here is the million-dollar question. Why? Why go to this extreme? Why tunnel 40 feet underground into unstable, dangerous rock? You do not build a mile-long aqueduct for a minor site. This implies massive importance. The discovery of a sunken port off the coast suggests this was not just a remote temple, it was a hub.
And Martinez believes this tunnel leads to the end of the line. Martinez's theory is terrifyingly simple. Cleopatra was not just hiding from death, she was hiding from Rome. She was hiding from the humiliation of being paraded in chains. She wanted to be buried with her lover, Mark Antony. She wanted to be immortalized as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis. And to do that, she needed a tomb that could never, ever be defiled. She buried herself where she thought no one would ever look. Kathleen Martinez may have found the front door to that sanctuary, and while we have not found the queen yet, the evidence we have uncovered points to a dark truth. What they found inside the mouths of the dead changed everything. The Court of the Dead. Inside the complex, the team made another discovery that sent shivers down their spines. Buried in 16 rock-cut tombs were mummies. But these were not ordinary burials. When the archaeologists peered into the crumbling faces of the dead, they saw something glittering in the darkness: gold. Inside their mouths, where their tongues should have been, were amulets made of gold foil. The ancient Egyptians believed that to survive the afterlife, you had to speak to Osiris, the lord of the underworld. You had to plead your case. A golden tongue gives the power to speak to a god. It grants what is called golden eloquence. But here is the catch. Why are they here? Why at this specific temple? Martinez believes these were not just random aristocrats. They were Cleopatra's people, her inner circle, her courtiers. They were buried here, equipped with the magic to speak to Osiris, perhaps to announce the arrival of their queen. Think about what that means. We are not just digging through a graveyard. We are standing in a royal reception hall. We are in her necropolis. And if the courtiers are here waiting for their queen, then the door is about to open. Despite Martinez's discovery, she is inches away from the queen's DNA. But while we wait for her to break the final seal, we already have a key to Cleopatra's genetic code. Or at least, we thought we did. To see Cleopatra's face, we do not need to wait for the tunnel. We just need to look at the bones of the sister she eliminated. The skeleton in the closet was actually a royal princess hunted to the end.
To understand the dead found at Taposiris Magna, we first have to understand the ruthlessness of the woman they served. History remembers Cleopatra as the seductress, but her family tree was more like a shark tank, and her biggest threat was not a Roman general. It was her own little sister, Arsinoe IV. This was a relationship defined by pure toxic ambition. When Cleopatra was exiled, it was Arsinoe who took the throne. When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt, it was Arsinoe who led the army against him. She was a warrior princess who actually managed to trap Caesar in the palace. But history is written by the victors. Arsinoe was eventually captured, dragged to Rome, and forced to march in chains. The Roman crowds actually wept for her, a teenage girl in shackles. That sympathy saved her life, and she was exiled to the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, in modern-day Turkey. She thought she was safe. She thought the holy ground would protect her. She was wrong. In 41 BCE, Cleopatra persuaded Mark Antony to do the unthinkable. He sent assassins to the temple steps. They dragged Arsinoe out and ended her life. It was a scandal that rocked the ancient world. But for us, 2,000 years later, it provided a location. We knew exactly where the crime occurred. For centuries, we thought Arsinoe was lost to history. Until the 1900s, when archaeologists in Ephesus found a unique tomb known as the Octagon. Inside was a skeleton. The bones belonged to a young person. If their theory was correct, this might just be the remains of Arsinoe IV. The timeline fits. The location fits. The age fits. If this was Arsinoe, we had Cleopatra's genetic code. We could finally answer the questions about her ethnicity, her health, and her lineage. We had the map to the queen's biology. But science has a way of ruining a good story. Initial DNA tests failed due to contamination. The bones had been handled too many times. But recently, in a 2025 study, advanced analysis finally gave us an answer. The results were not just shocking, they were biologically impossible. The boy in the tomb. For years, the skeleton in Ephesus was our only mirror to Cleopatra's face. Scholars looked at those bones and saw a queen's sister. They saw African heritage. They saw the answer to a centuries-old riddle. But recently, modern technology took a second look, and the mirror cracked. The breakthrough happened in 2022. A team from the University of Vienna, led by anthropologist Gerhard Weber, finally located the long-lost skull in the university archives. It had been sitting there unnoticed for decades. This was the game changer.
They did not just look at it, they saw through it. Using micro-CT scans, they created a high-resolution digital map of the bone structure, and they drilled into the petrous temporal bone. This is the densest part of the skull, a biological safe that preserves DNA even when the rest of the skeleton has turned to dust. In January 2025, the results were published in scientific reports, and they revealed a medical horror story. The skeleton is not Arsinoe. It is not a 20-year-old woman. It is not an African princess. The DNA proved the presence of a Y chromosome. The sister of Cleopatra is a boy, specifically an adolescent boy between 11 and 14 years old. And get this, he was not just young, he was suffering. The scans revealed severe developmental disorders. His jaw was stunted, his skull was asymmetrical and twisted. The analysis suggests he suffered from something like Treacher-Collins syndrome or severe rickets. This was not a healthy royal rival. This was a child with a face that had been misshapen by genetic tragedy. Even more shocking was that his DNA tells us he was not from Egypt. His genetic markers trace back to Italy or Sardinia. This opens up a darker, more confusing mystery. We thought we were looking at the victim of a political assassination. Instead, we are looking at a tragedy of a different kind. The Octagon turned out to be a heroine, a tomb built for a hero, a semi-divine figure. Why was a deformed, sickly Italian boy buried in one of the most prestigious tombs in the ancient world? Was he a scapegoat, a sacrifice, or was he a hidden royal child of Roman and Ptolemaic blood, whose existence was so shameful or so dangerous that he had to be buried with honors, but far away from home? Whatever the answer is, it turns out that the scientific proof of Cleopatra's African lineage in this specific tomb was an illusion caused by bad science and wishful thinking. So, where does that leave us? We are back to the historical record, and the record tells us that Cleopatra was the product of the Ptolemaic dynasty. And if you want to know what she really looked like, you do not need to find her body. You just need to look at the terrifying family tree she climbed to get to the throne. Her family tree did not branch out. It went in circles, breeding monsters. The boy in Ephesus might have been a secret, but in Alexandria, the genetic nightmare was not a secret. It was a royal policy, characterized by what is called pedigree collapse. In a normal family tree, the branches expand upward. You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. The further back you go, the more ancestors you have. It is a funnel opening up to the world. But Cleopatra's family tree did not expand. It collapsed in on itself. The Ptolemies were a Greek dynasty ruling Egypt. They wanted to keep their power absolute and their bloodline pure. So they adopted the ancient pharaonic custom of close kin marriage. They did not just marry cousins, they married siblings. Historians believe Cleopatra's own parents, Ptolemy XII and Cleopatra V, were likely full siblings. Even her grandparents may most likely have been uncle and niece, or even brother and sister. This family was obviously a closed loop. Geneticists estimate that Cleopatra was born with a coefficient of inbreeding estimated at over 45%. To put that in perspective, the child of 2 first cousins has about a 6% coefficient. In many royal dynasties like the Habsburgs of Spain, this level of inbreeding led to severe deformities and madness. For example, consider Charles II of Spain. Historians call him the Bewitched. He was the end of the Habsburg line, a dynasty that practiced the same kind of intermarriage as the Ptolemies. Charles was a medical tragedy. He could not speak until he was 4. He could not walk until he was 8. His jaw was so deformed that his top and bottom teeth could not touch. He literally could not chew his food. He swallowed everything whole. When he died at age 38, the autopsy report stated that his body did not contain a single drop of blood. His head was full of water, and his heart was the size of a peppercorn. His coefficient of inbreeding was around 25%. Cleopatra was nearly double that. So why does this happen? The science comes down to something called homozygosity. Normally, your DNA is a conversation between your mother and father. One covers the flaws of the other. If your mother passes down a recessive gene for a weakness or a disease, your father usually passes down a dominant gene for strength to cancel it out. It is a biological safety net. But in Cleopatra's case, there was no conversation. The same genes repeating the same errors over and over.
Because her parents were siblings, they carried the exact same genetic flaws. There was no healthy gene to step in and save her. Biologically, she should have been a disaster. Inbreeding like this usually results in the kind of deformities we saw in that boy in Ephesus: physical weakness, cognitive issues, short lifespans. But here is the terrifying paradox. History tells us Cleopatra was not deformed. She was brilliant. She spoke 9 languages. She charmed the most powerful man in Rome. So how is that possible?
She might have been fighting a disease that looked like genius, the mask of youth. Was she a genetic miracle? A 1 in a million roll of the biological dice? Or have we been missing the signs of her suffering all along? To understand if she was a victim, we have to look at the perpetrators, her ancestors. If you want to know what Cleopatra was fighting against, look at her great-grand-uncle, Ptolemy VIII. This was Cleopatra's great-grand-uncle, but because of the family tree, he is also a direct genetic mirror. And he was a medical catastrophe. They called him Physcon, which translates to potbelly, but that was being polite. Historical records describe him as morbidly obese, with limbs that were too weak to support his massive frame. He had to be walked around by supporters. But look closer at the descriptions. It was not just fat. Sources mention a swollen neck, prominent bulging eyes, shortness of breath. Modern medical historians looking at the Ptolemaic dynasty see a pattern of genetic metabolic disorders. They see a family line plagued by obesity and lethargy. And most terrifying of all, they see the markers of Graves' disease, an autoimmune disorder that attacks the thyroid. It causes bulging eyes and a goiter or swollen neck. And here is where the diagnosis gets terrifying. Graves' disease doesn't just affect the way you look, it affects the way you act. It floods the body with thyroid hormones, creating a state of hyperstimulation. Symptoms include manic energy, rapid speech, insomnia, and erratic, high-stakes behavior. Does that sound familiar? Historians have always praised Cleopatra for her boundless vitality. They say she could work all night, that she was constantly on the move. We have framed this as genius, but medical anthropologists are now asking a darker question. Was Cleopatra's legendary energy actually a symptom? Was the fire inside her a result of a genetic thyroid storm passed down from her uncle? So how did she function?
The answer might lie in a skill historians often overlook. She was not just a queen, she was a chemist. If she was living with the chronic pain of pedigree collapse, the same kind of joint and bone agony that plagued the Habsburgs, she likely turned to the royal pharmacy. Egypt was the pharmaceutical capital of the ancient world. If she was in pain, she had access to opium harvested from the poppy fields of Thebes. It was the ancient world's ultimate painkiller. Did she use it to numb the ache in her genetically compromised joints so she could stand tall during endless diplomatic receptions? If she suffered from the mania and insomnia of Graves' disease, she might have turned to Kefi. This was a complex temple incense, often burned at night, known for its sedative properties. Plutarch wrote that its scent lulled one to sleep and loosened the daily tension like a knot. For a woman possibly trembling with hyperthyroid energy, Kefi would not just be a perfume, it would be medicine. Then there is the blue lotus, a mild psychoactive flower often steeped in wine. It produces a sense of euphoria, a floating feeling. We talk about her legendary charisma, but was that charisma natural, or was it chemically induced? Was her magnetic, high-energy allure actually a delicate cocktail of blue lotus wine and adrenaline, keeping her floating above the pain of her own body? We know Cleopatra wrote a book on cosmetics called Cosmeticon. Fragments of it were quoted by later doctors like Galen. This shows she was not just buying makeup, she was researching it. Why? If the pot-belly gene gave her skin issues, or if Graves' disease gave her a goiter, her obsession with cosmetics was not vanity, it was camouflage. She may have experimented with kohl just to reshape eyes that might have been too prominent. She may have designed elaborate broad collars and jewelry just to hide a swollen neck. She was arguably the world's first biohacker, a brilliant woman trapped in a failing body, using every trick of chemistry, botany, and art to project the image of a living goddess while privately treating herself like a patient. She painted a lie over her face. But the truth is underground. What will we find? And this brings us back to where we started, deep beneath the Taposiris Magna temple, where Kathleen Martinez is still digging. For 20 years, she has been hunting for the final resting place of Cleopatra.
And thanks to that massive tunnel, the geometric miracle, she is closer than anyone has ever been. But after everything we have analyzed today, the stakes of this discovery have changed. When we started this journey, we were looking for a legend. We were looking for the seductress who charmed Rome, the beauty played by Hollywood stars, the goddess Isis incarnate. But science tells us to prepare for something else. If Martinez breaks through that final wall and finds the sarcophagus, she won't just be uncovering a queen, she will be uncovering a medical archive. She might find a woman who was petite, perhaps frail, hiding her pain behind a mask. She might find a woman who looked less like a movie star and more like a survivor. A woman who fought a war against Rome with her mind while fighting a war against her own DNA with her pharmacy. Finding Cleopatra won't just rewrite history books, it will rewrite biology textbooks. It will finally answer the question, was she the genetic miracle who escaped the curse, or was she the silent sufferer who ruled in spite of it? For now, the excavated tunnel remains silent, swallowed by the heavy, suffocating stillness of the earth. Deep underground, the air is thick with thousands of years of dust, undisturbed and watching. Above ground, the advanced DNA sequencers and ground-penetrating radar units sit idle, waiting like hungry predators. They are the modern keys designed to unlock a door that has been bolted shut for over 2 millennia, ready to analyze even the faintest trace of royal lineage. The ghost of the last pharaoh, Cleopatra VII, is still keeping her secrets, guarding her final resting place with a stubborn resolve that rivals her reign. She continues to taunt history from the shadows, eluding the archaeologists who have dedicated their lives to finding her. But this silence is only temporary.
And thanks to that massive tunnel, the geometric miracle, she is closer than anyone has ever been. But after everything we have analyzed today, the stakes of this discovery have changed. When we started this journey, we were looking for a legend. We were looking for the seductress who charmed Rome, the beauty played by Hollywood stars, the goddess Isis incarnate. But science tells us to prepare for something else. If Martinez breaks through that final wall and finds the sarcophagus, she won't just be uncovering a queen. She will be uncovering a medical archive. She might find a woman who was petite, perhaps frail, hiding her pain behind a mask. She might find a woman who looked less like a movie star and more like a survivor. A woman who fought a war against Rome with her mind while fighting a war against her own DNA with her pharmacy. Finding Cleopatra won't just rewrite history books, it will rewrite biology textbooks. It will finally answer the question, was she the genetic miracle who escaped the curse, or was she the silent sufferer who ruled in spite of it? For now, the excavated tunnel remains silent, swallowed by the heavy, suffocating stillness of the earth. Deep underground, the air is thick with thousands of years of dust, undisturbed and watching. Above ground, the advanced DNA sequencers and ground-penetrating radar units sit idle, waiting like hungry predators. They are the modern keys designed to unlock a door that has been bolted shut for over 2 millennia, ready to analyze even the faintest trace of royal lineage. The ghost of the last pharaoh, Cleopatra VII, is still keeping her secrets, guarding her final resting place with a stubborn resolve that rivals her reign. She continues to taunt history from the shadows, eluding the archaeologists who have dedicated their lives to finding her. But this silence is only temporary.
As technology advances, the gap between the legend and the hard evidence narrows. We must prepare ourselves because the truth we are chasing might not be the romantic tragedy we expect. The reality of Cleopatra is far more complex and far more terrifying than the silver screen myth we fell in love with. We aren't just looking for a beautiful queen. We are hunting for a ruthless political survivor, a master strategist who eliminated siblings to seize power, and a woman who watched her dynasty crumble in blood. When that tomb is finally breached, we won't just be rewriting history books. We will be staring directly into the face of a raw ancient power that has refused to die. So, if they open the tomb tomorrow and find out Cleopatra looked like a monster, do we burn the history books, or does that make her even more impressive? Let me know your theory below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more mysteries unearthed.